Games Workshop has updated their points, and there have been a couple of changes. We're most notably seeing a change to one particular thing that they want to get rid of. Multiple small units, MSU. So lots of units that were incredibly cheap and just had a couple of people that could still hold an objective or complete a secondary objective, they've gone up in points. Games Workshop has also changed the way that the points are displayed for the different 40k factions. It now tells you if it's a codex or an index that's getting its updated version. So the Tau is still on that index version and there are no points changes, but a few weeks after their codex is officially launched, there will be a document released that updates their points for Codex Tau. If you want a full analysis of the Tau Codex detachments, I have that as a video. But the recently released Codex Custodes and Codex Orcs have their new points here, and it shows that it is Codex Custodes that's getting its points updated. And that immediately overrules any points that were listed in the physical book that you could buy. So this is a very minor change, it helps a bit with the display of it, but they're still not doing what they do for Age of Sigmar, where they show off the amount of points that it is changed by. And I don't know why they won't just do that. They mentioned in their live podcast that, oh yeah, we really like that we have a green symbol for points going down and a red symbol for points going up, so getting worse, but tell us how many points. The Adeptus Mechanicus have got points drops, swathes of points drops, but that makes them even more of a horde, and so you will have to buy even more of the expensive models to get a starting army. Like the Deathwatch Combat Patrol is a pretty standard combat patrol and is 395 points. The new AdMech Combat Patrol is 255. That's really bad if you want to start an army. Games Workshop has said, the AdMech are doing really badly. They haven't released their meta watch for which faction is where in percentage wins, at least according to Games Workshop's percentage wins, but the AdMech are doing very badly to the point where they will need a rework. So in 3 months' time, that's when we'll see a rework document, but they've been badly performing since their codex came out. The Necrons, whose codex was released at the same time, are doing way better, and Games Workshop has said they're currently at 56% win rate. Now, when I did a live stream about this, I said that the problem units were the Catan. A Transcendent Catan is the same points as the Tyrannid Non-Emissary, 275 points, but they're far more oppressive. You have a very high toughness, 4+ invulnerable save, a 5+ feel no pain, and you're halving all damage. Oh yes, and they have reanimation, so in every Necron command phase they regain D3 wounds. It is a lot. Well, they went up by 10 points, so take that. It may seem incredibly minor, but it reduces your ability to take 3 of them. The Nightbringer, as its own unique kind of Catan shard, went up by 40 points. The Void Dragon went up by 20 points, but the Deceiver remains the same. I guess his special rule is not considered as valuable for the same profile. The other main unit hit is the Technomancer. Now I suggested that the Technomancer was the problem model. The Wraiths plus the Technomancer is incredibly tough. Wraiths alone were not being run. Wraiths alone are totally fine. But the Wraiths with the Technomancer, where you get a 5+ fear no pain, and the ability to heal the models in the unit, that becomes too much. Oh, the Technomancer can also heal the Catan shards for D3 wounds. So seeing that the Technomancer went up by 25 points, I am very happy that Games Workshop noticed this as well and boosted the Technomancer's points but left the Wraiths alone. Good job, thanks for listening to me, all being sensible and having the same thought process. No, it's me. I'm the genius. The points aren't all up. The Scorpeth Destroyers dropped by 10 points for 3 models among other units, so that's good, we should see some more variation of lists, but there's no love for the Necron Warriors. They were great in the Index, but poor in the Codex compared to the Necron Immortals. That's the other big combo post-Index, is having Immortals plus powerful Cryptex like the Plasmancer to give massive amounts of lethal hits or sustained hits depending on the kind of weapon the Immortals have. So the Necrons will have to find more tactics, but they have the variety of units to do that, and they may start to mellow a little bit competitively. Just a little. Aside from the 2 robotic factions, I'm going to talk generally about other factions, but we're going to hone in on the factions that we play. Well, that most of my fans play. The Genestealer Cult, the Glorious Sisters of Battle, and I don't want to forget the Deathwatch. The Sisters of Battle have changed a bit. Very minor changes. We have 5 points more for 3 Arcoflagellants or 10 points more for 10. That is pretty minor. So I guess Games Workshop still very much wants people to take Repentia over Arcoflagellants. But really the Arcoflagellants are not the target this time. It is the small units that hold objectives and die to grant us miracle dice. The multiple small units are the ones being hit this time. So in MSU gameplay, you take lots of small units, it might just be 2 models, like the Crusaders, it might be 3 models, like the Arcoflagellants. They hold objectives just as well as a unit of 10, as long as there's nothing attacking them, and they can be used to complete lots of secondary objectives. Otherwise, a unit cannot shoot when they're performing them, so you pick a unit like Crusaders who have no guns, and having no guns does not prevent you from being eligible to shoot. They complete the secondary objective, while the rest of your army gets to killing. And lots of small units for the Sisters of Battle. Every time a unit of whatever size dies, we gain a miracle dice. This is the sort of thing Games Workshop wants to stop. We've seen it with the Inquisitorial Henchmen. They went up 10 points for 4 models, but only if you take them as 4 models. That was the size that everyone was taking just to have a couple of people sit on an objective. So the Sisters of Battle have seen the 3 Arcoflagellant unit go up, and the Assassins and the Crusaders also jump up. They've gone up 10 points for 2 of them, but only if you're taking 2 of them. If you take 4 or 6, it's the same points level as before. So technically it is now more economical to have a unit of 4 rather than 2, but it still costs more points for 4 than 2, obviously. And 2 models will do the job of holding an objective or coming in from reserves to be present on a table quarter for a secondary objective, just as well as 4 models. Now I don't think this is an error, they haven't updated one line and not the others. This is intentional. So do notice that only the points cost of a pair of Crusaders or a pair of Assassins has gone up, not the overall cost per model. For the points difference we have, if you did fancy a unit of more than 2, then you may be better off considering the Celestian Sacrosancts. They are down 1 point per model, but as a single wound model with a 3+ save, even with an invulnerable save, they die very quickly. Toughness 3 is easy to wound, even if they have the Sworn Protectors for -1 to wound, but they need to have a character with them, which is an extra points investment. Their invulnerable save is only going to be coming in at AP -2. It is rare for a gun of AP -2 to be fired at infantry. I don't think a points drop of 1 point is going to change how often they're included. Players that like hitting things with sticks will still include them. Tournament players will probably still go with paying 10 points more to have 2 units of Crusaders over 5 Sacrosancts. You can hold more objectives, you can complete more actions. The Penitent Engines and the Mortifiers are down by 5 points. Nice! They are great at killing things with their big buzz blades. Having them coming up the field at you is concerning. Penitent Engine, more like Distraction Engine. Am I right? Yes, I'm right. They are great distractions. Even though these are light vehicles with toughness 6, the feel no pain and 5 wounds means you still need to put anti-tank firepower into them to get it to go down. With the exception that traditionally anti-tank weapons like the melter gun can also put them down, which is not something they can otherwise do to tanks in this edition. But if your opponent can get into melter range, they will have started their turn in murder range. Penitent Engine moving 8 inches plus advance and charge. Well, how many units are 8 plus 3d6 inches away to not get charged but also be able to hit you with melter weapons? It's not a lot. Multi-melters are 18-inch range now. And unlike in previous editions, these screaming heretics can use miracle dice to make that charge. Just imagine that the engine itself is holy, the heretic is merely a fuel source. The Triumph of St. Catherine is up by 15 points. That's understandable as they are often a linchpin in 2,000-point lists. I prefer to spread my points out and my units out and have the characters in the unit instead of relying on an aura, where one casualty being removed wrong can mess up your unit so that they stop getting any of the benefit. The Triumph does a lot, including making a good vocal performance. The link to the video on the Triumph is in the top right, or it's at the bottom of the description on YouTube. Our enhancement, the Blade of St. Eleanor, has gone up by 10 points. That is fair. It is taken by pretty much every Sisters player, competitively, casually, in a crusade. Yeah, it's a good weapon. Unlike a lot of other enhancements, it's not so much an add-on that you throw in if you have some spare points. You take a Preacher or a Palatine with the intention of having that blade. If not for the blade, you may skip the character entirely. But don't. Because the +1 to wound from Preachers is good, the Palatine giving out lethal hits to her squad is very good when we have a Miracle Dice, or when you have a Dialogus in the same Battle Sisters unit to turn any Miracle Dice to a 6. You use a Miracle Dice of a 1, that turns into a 6, it hits and then auto-wounds, so if you're doing that on a Melter weapon, then the AP of the Melter will often mean no armor save. So you go from, I will now roll to hit, except I won't roll to hit, I'm going to use a Miracle Dice, and now I'll go straight to rolling damage. Great fun. The Palatine and her Rapturous Blow special ability is good even without the blade. But we like the blade. If we're stabbing things with blades, the Demonifuge is 10 points cheaper. Lovely. I think she's very underused. And Ephriel Stern is underused because the Sisters of Battle like to have the characters and unit combos. So Preachers plus Arcoflagellants, Palatines plus Novitiates. As a lone operative, even a lone operative with a pet Eldar on a leash, she doesn't fit the standard Sisters of Battle combat tactics. Ephriel Stern is an assassin, more so than our Death Cult assassins. Her blade has anti-chaos, so all demons, chaos cultists, chaos marines, and chaos knights, yes it works on vehicles, they are being wounded on a 2+. With fights first and precision on all the melee weapons, the Demonifuge pair can kill characters really well. There are so many uses for her. You can drop her behind enemy lines to score secondaries for the same price as 5 Seraphim, but she has the lone operative special rule to avoid bullets. There's a 4+ invulnerable save, and an ablative Xeno shield. Just hold up the one with the pointy ears until the bullets stop. If you want her in the traditional unit plus character sister style combo, have her behind a Sisters of Battle unit. If or when the squad in front gets charged, you get a free heroic intervention with Ephriel Stern to get her in there. And if the squad that was charged is valuable, use the Suffering and Sacrifice stratagem to force enemy models to attack Ephriel Stern, or the Eldar. It works best against Chaos Knights and monsters like Angron. He can be very inconvenienced, and he's angry enough to be distracted by a floating red cape, like a bull in La Corrida. At least that's how the tradition goes, the bull isn't actually bothered by the colour red. Or, think of it this way. Who among us can see an Eldar and not want to kill it? That's why Ephriel Stern is a saint. She will tolerate the Eldar. I'm not expecting Sisters of Battle tournaments list to change very much. The average competitive list has gone up about 50 points. What you drop and swap will be up to you. Don't underestimate the distraction and killing potential of penitent engines. Losing the Triumph, as long as your whole strategy is not based around having the Triumph for St. Catherine, and then getting a penitent engine for direct killing, is one way to go. The Genestealer Cult has had some points changes, but not where I think it matters. There is nothing for Metamorphs and nothing for the Magos. Those units are still not going to see competitive or even casual play. I have tried adding more Metamorphs, but they would have come back through Cult Ambush if I had used an Acolyte squad instead. Because as a battle line unit, Acolytes get +1 to the roll for Cult Ambush. If I'd used Acolytes, they would have had mining weapons. The Acolytes have Objective Control 2 instead of Objective Control 1, and so my unit would have held the objective against the enemy Space Marine Tactical Squad. The Metamorphs can scout, but so much of our army has Infiltrate or a better scout move, like the Atlan Jackals. Or you can use the cheaper Astra Militarum Catachans, who have scout. A Sanctus with a knife does the same sort of job for fewer points, and it can mess up enemy characters. The Aberrants have had the tiniest of tweaks. They didn't need it. They were already good and being taken, but it may be a nudge from Games Workshop to pick units that aren't battle line. Other than myself and a few enterprising fellows who are trying to forge a new meta, the same tactics from the start of 10th edition are coming through again and again. Lots of battle line units. Games Workshop is helping to push us towards the use of vehicles. We have 20 points off the Cult Truck. We have 25 points off the Rock Grinder and 10 points off the Ridge Runner. To most players' army lists, this is barely a change. My default list has got 15 points cheaper. But if you wanted to use a mechanized list with mechanized tactics, I have a great video for you to help you exploit these point reductions. Just know that the Rock Grinder can't scout even with Metamorphs because you have to be a dedicated transport, not just a transport. And I have a very big Genestealer Cult video coming out soon. Very big. More than movie length big. We can also take the Astra Militarum vehicles, and they have seen some changes as well. The Imperial Guard, or the Brood Brothers, the Basilisk has gone up in points, the Manticore's gone up in points, the Medusa is up in points. All of the artillery units are up in points. This is a problem because artillery is the only way to play the Imperial Guard when you have just one detachment. The detachment special rule gives you lethal hits if you remain stationary, in an addition where you need to be moving around and taking objectives. So the only units that are staying still are the artillery. This hits the only way you can really play this detachment. Yeah, sure, you have the reinforcement stratagem that lets you recycle infantry units, but that's sort of the only thing. This is a weird detachment, and the way orders work, where they can be given out even if your officer is battle-shocked, you can give them to a unit that is battle-shocked, that only loses the order if they become battle-shocked. And I don't like a platoon often being one unit of 25 models, so that is why I haven't been tempted to play with my Imperial Guard so far this edition. More than any other faction, I think the Astra Militarum need a new detachment like the Dark Eldar got with the Sky Splinter Assault Force. Just put out a detachment on the Warhammer community page or put it in White Dwarf. That'll be fine. But there is great news for the Genestealer Cult, who use the Astra Militarum as brood brothers. The big tanks like the Shadow Sword are untouched. The Leman Russ variants are down by 10 points on all the main index versions except for the Demolisher and the Tank Commander. If you want to know which Leman Russ is best, either for Imperial Guard or Genestealer Cult, I have a video on that which still holds up. Now, Genestealer Cult players, consider the Hellhound. It went down 10 points, and it is amazing for us. It doesn't need orders to make it hit better because it has torrent weapons. It can give us some melter for anti-tank, well, sort of anti-tank, and importantly, it has a special rule that affects the target unit to remove cover from them. So unlike the Scout Sentinel, that isn't just helping Astra Militarum keyword brood brothers. It is for all of our units that are targeting that enemy unit. So for that purpose, it is better than the Augur on the Achilles Ridge Runner. And I know that we get ignore cover when we come up from reserves, but we're not always coming up from reserves. So the Genestealer Cult will be a little bit annoyed by the points going up for artillery, particularly if you're relying on basilisks to make the enemy upset. But we have our own codex units to use instead, the Deathwatch. There is no change to the specialist Deathwatch units, but there are a lot of changes for regular Marine units, which in turn affects us, because it affects if we're going to take the regular version of the units or the specialized ones. Tactical squads are 20 points cheaper. Get in! Now you may say, hang on, Von Carmian, restrain those equines. We can't take the wonderful firstborn, the backbone of the chapter, the ones who held the line for 10,000 years before some child got pumped full of Primaris juice and thought he could be an experienced Marine just because he knows how to use a bolter. We can't in the Black Spear task force, but you can use any of the other Space Marine detachments and there are no restrictions. So you can have tactical Marines in your Deathwatch army, and then you can add in the specialist Deathwatch units like the Proteus Kill Team and the Watchmaster. Other than the Proteus Kill Team, I don't think we'll see Deathwatch Kill Teams. With 10 tactical Marines at 140 points, do you want even a regular veteran squad at 110 points for 5 Marines with the same profile? You won't get as many special weapons, but the same cool weapons can be put into the Proteus Kill Team. It is now 35 points more to have Deathwatch Terminators instead of a regular Terminator squad. The Assault Terminators also dropped 2 points per model. 2 more special weapons in the Deathwatch variant is hard to justify for an additional 35 points. Again, the Proteus Kill Team is the best place for all your assault cannons and cyclone missile launchers. I don't think there are changes that will alter the Deathwatch current unit roster. The Deathwatch armies are like watered-down Space Marines. With no points changes to the kill teams, none at all, it's very disappointing. We are essentially a Space Marine army. The Black Templars, they basically had copies of the same Space Marine tank, but with an extra multi-melter. Now it costs more points. The Powerful Sword Brethren went up 2 points per model, and the Crusader squad went up, but only the Firstborn version, and only for a unit of 5. So Hordes of Black Templars is still how they like to play, still how you can play them, and at the same points. But like I've said, this time, Games Workshop wants to stop the multiple small units tactics, and having an army where 1 in 5 models has a las cannon, and 1 in 5 models has a plasma gun, that's the bit they want to stop. And having the cheaper tactical Marines is very nice. The Dark Angels have had a points reduction on the units that were very similar to the Space Marine ones, but weren't worth taking compared to the regular versions. There was no point having Inner Circle companions when there's Blade Guard. Deathwing Terminators and Deathwing Knights didn't really cut it over regular Space Marine Terminators. Now they might, but the regular Marine Terminators points drop may still deter Dark Angels players from taking their own specialist units. With all of these changes happening to the other factions, and the Space Wolves, they got cheaper Terminators, why didn't the Deathwatch? It just fuels the rumours that, oh, this mystery codex, that's going to be Imperial agents, and they're going to rip the Deathwatch out of Space Marines and jam them in there as like 2 specialist units. The Custodes. They are all cheaper. Everything in the codex is cheaper than before, because the units are all worse in the codex than the index. And the detachments, even the detachment that tries to make the Sisters of Silence work, by forcing you to make them work, it isn't good. The Sisters of Silence don't have the profile or the abilities to work in this edition. They should at least have 2 wounds. And they're anti-psychic in 10th edition, where anything psychic is relegated to a special rule or a shooting profile. So the Custodes went from being very tough and hyper-elite to elite and tough. Now they have flipped 3 times this edition from being great competitively, bad, great, and now we're back to bad. That is what all the Custodes related comments online have been about. That and nothing else. I see it. I see it. I want to touch it to have 20,000 views on a low effort video, but I know that fire is hot and it will burn you. Don't touch the fire. So I'm not sticking my hand in the fire. The Eldar are mostly the same, just a little points up for commonly used units like the Swooping Hawks, and finally, the Shadow Spectres in Forge World. They were just too good for what they did. If you want to know more about them, look up Proxy Hammer, he has at least 1 video on the Shadow Spectres. The Chaos Space Marines did a lot worse after they were heavily hit in January's balance patch. Now there are points drops for a lot of units that weren't targeted back then. So the regular cultist mob, the legionaries, the terminators, the Helbrute, the raptors, the bikes, actually a lot of the units that I have. It's given me the points to double the size of a cultist mob, or to have another one, just to spite Games Workshop and keep up the MSU tactics on a unit that has sticky objectives. Like the Imperial Guard, the World Eaters were stuck with 1 way to play, but they only had 1 viable tournament list after the January points update. Well, their Jackals are cheaper, Berserkers are cheaper, and their Terminators and Helbrute are cheaper. And that Helbrute still has a near infinite amount of firepower as its ability is triggered every time an enemy targets the Helbrute. You don't even need to hurt it, you just need to look at it with a gun. The Blood Angels. The Death Company units are up 2 points per model. People with generic Space Marine units were taking just generic Space Marine units and then adding in a Death Company with all their crazy weapons. You can have a Thunderhammer on every single model. So by having a standard Space Marine army, which can use a standard Codex Space Marine detachment, and then declaring themselves to be Blood Angels to add them in, that's how they were getting some insane combat prowess compared to the Tactical Squad, the Vanguard Veterans with jump packs, and the Assault Intercessors with jump packs, the Assault Squad. That squad. I like this. I do not have a problem with the way detachments work in 10th edition, including the Space Marine detachments. The issue I have is with the points. The free war gear is what made the Death Company so amazing, and the massive rift between 2 very similar models in points, especially for the Deathwatch. The points problem is ongoing, but my darlings and viewers, have a great day with updated points in 40k.